Hi, it's Georgia. Having a go with some alcohol inks again. I'm using Maribu, which I quite like, and that colour is called Gention. I'm applying it with a paintbrush rather than just dropping the drops on top there, because it tends to form very dark areas when you drop it straight onto the clay. So if you apply it with the paintbrush, you can get a fairly even coverage across the clay. That clay, I think, is Fimo Professional, and I've rolled it out on number 0 on my Atlas 150. Quite satisfying seeing that really dark blue against the white. It covers up nicely. So clean your paintbrush off at the end, and then use it to take all the little bits off that shouldn't be there. And if you think there are any more areas that need coverage, just go over. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be doing quite a lot to this one. Once again, more is more when it comes to me. So we're starting with alcohol inks, and then as the ideas come, as I'm making them, you'll see the other things that I apply. So try and clean your paintbrush off. It's just a little baby wipe there. Now that is a dropper from some eye drops that I use on my dog's eye. So I've obviously emptied it out, washed it out. And the idea was, as you can see, I'm trying to drop from quite a height. And what I'm dropping is isopropyl alcohol, which separates the alcohol ink as it drops. Now the idea was I was going to drop it from quite a height and it would almost form like a splash of a puddle. So you'd see the edges of the puddle drop out or fly out. But that didn't work out that way. Maybe I need to be much higher than what I tried, but I did have the camera above me, so I couldn't go higher than that because I would have been dropping that on top of the camera. Now this stuff is amazing. This is also Maribu again, and it's called Diamond Sparkle. And I'm hoping that you will see how lovely and sparkly it is. You can see it goes on, and can you see how it's jumping around, it's fizzing up. It's so pretty. So I'm applying little dots all over the place again, seeing how that turns out. It does start spreading. It's absolutely fascinating watching that. I've not seen another alcohol ink that does that. It's fizzing away. So I'm waiting a bit in between just to see how far it's spreading out. Obviously the clay is quite wet as well because I've been dropping the isopropyl alcohol onto it. Then back in again with the blues. Now that's come out quite dark. Oh, and that as well. And that is fizzing with the diamond sparkle. That's a brilliant name for it. It certainly does sparkle. I wanted a more subtle look than I've actually got there. There's too much of a contrast for me. I'd have liked it to blend in a little bit more. So I think I might be going back again with the diamond. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing at this moment. Oh no, I'm not. So that is called an air blower, and you use that when your alcohol ink is still wet so that it moves around. And as you can see, it's actually improving those really dark droplets that I put on of the blue alcohol ink. It's starting to blend them in a bit more. So just keeping that moving, you get the hang of it as you're doing it, as to what works and what doesn't and where it goes. And there, oh, I did think I used a bit more. So, and a little bit more. This is one alcohol ink I will certainly replace. When that runs out, I will be getting more diamond sparkle. I think everybody needs a bit of diamond sparkle in their life. get that blower, get it moving all around so it's blending in and you don't have any sharp lines. You can use a straw to do that, and I have seen people do it, but I've also heard that when you are using a straw, when you breathe in before you blow out, make sure you're away from the alcohol ink, because obviously you're breathing in the fumes of the alcohol ink. So I prefer doing it with the air blower. It's almost like big bellows, really. And I'm not sure what brand that is. I think you can get, there are a few brands. Okay, so I'm going to go back in with that dropper again. This time I'm going to put some on the tile and then dab a sponge into it and soften those lines. That's starting to look quite nice now. Obviously alcohol ink dries up quite quickly. And it's great when you've got a big white ceramic tile like this. You can put things like paint or your alcohol ink just on the edges of it and use it up and then just wipe it off again. I do like the really large ceramic tiles. I'm going to try and look out for one that isn't shiny so that the camera doesn't pick up the lights. Go back in and just soften all the edges, get it all blending in together or blurring in together. Now I'm going to take some, that's Decoart White Pearl, another favourite of mine. I seem to like these shiny whites. As I was saying, use your large ceramic tile, and we're back again with that splatter brush, which is the Ranger splatter brush, and I'm just putting random streaks of white across there. Now it looks quite of a contrast, but at the end it's not so much of a contrast. Just do little random touches up. And you can blend it while it's still wet, you can blend it in as well. Well, those are quite nice brush strokes now, looking at that. As I've said before, I don't use a soft brush because you can't, I like to see the brush strokes. And because that is almost like a nylon, they're quite firm. So I'm taking a baby wipe and I'm just going to, oh look at that, I've got ink all over my fingers again. Should have worn gloves. Just taking a baby wipe and just blotting out the excess ink or paint that might be on the top. Can you see that bottom left hand side, as the light catches it, that blue is changing colours. It's almost going to a turquoise blue. So you've got darker blues and then turquoise blues. And I'm feathering that out across the whole of the surface. Back again with the baby wipe and damp it off. Because I'm quite impatient, I'm going to use something else to dry this up, because I like to, it's hard, I like to get on and do things, not put things on one side and wait for it to dry. Okay, now the reason I am doing that is I'm going to use a textured roller. Now that textured roller is very textured, it's very deep textured, and I thought if I put it straight onto the alcohol ink, it might go through right to the bottom and lift up the alcohol inks that are on there. So I put the cling film on, and I even dusted a little bit of cornstarch on so that it didn't stick. And that impression is really pretty. As you can see, some lovely swirls on there. And back again with the isopropyl alcohol. And that, I don't know if you'll be able to pick that up on the camera, that actually runs in all the little grooves and it starts lightening up the areas again. That's quite nice. I think I might try it in other ways by putting a texture on first and then using alcohol inks afterwards on a different design. That dropper works brilliantly. Really pleased with that. Thank you, Tia, for her eyes. There we go. There's my little secret weapon. That's a little fan that I just hold above the work to try and dry it extra quick. And then, as a precaution, back again with the baby wipe and take any excess off there. Clean up your area. Always makes you feel better if you've got a clean area. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be cutting it out, and that's a little box that I have a sponge in, and I spray this son of a gun protectant in there, which I get off of Amazon, and it holds it nicely in the sponge. I will then dip my cutter, as you can see it's quite an intricate cutter, I will dip that into the sponge and it will form a layer on the cutting edges. I don't use cornstarch because I'm concerned that the cornstarch will actually stick to the alcohol ink. So that's why I use that. So cut out all your designs, and because it's alcohol ink and it does stain, make sure you clean your cut as well when you've finished using them. Not too many pieces out of these. Clean that off again. Those little ones didn't make it to the end. They broke. And then just some circles, which are always useful. There's so many things you could do with that. You could turn them into studs, just put little holes in them, have them as dangles, which is what I think I have done. Remove that skeleton, which is quite soft now because of all the alcohol ink. And here you have them, the final product. Hope you've enjoyed watching this. And if you did, please subscribe or just like. Until then we meet again. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.